Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're going exploring some of the more interesting words and phrases in the English language.
Yeah, it's going to be a deep dive into vocabulary and how words can change meaning over time and all of that.
Exactly. And hopefully this will give everybody listening a chance to maybe add a few more words to their vocabulary.
Right, or at least understand like where some of the more common phrases come from.
Okay, so let's jump right into it. Our first word, epiphany. I feel like this is a word people throw around,
Oh yeah, for sure.
but they may not actually, fully understand it.
Right, they probably just think like, "Oh, I had a realization. I had an epiphany."
It sounds kind of fancy.
It does.
But it's more than just, a regular realization.
Exactly.
Our source describes it more like, when the clouds part and there's suddenly a clear sky.
Oh yeah, that's a good analogy.
That's kind of the feeling of an epiphany.
Yeah, it is.
And I love that
But
because it's like a sudden clarity.
exactly, it's like a moment of revelation.
Now I'm curious, where does the word actually come from?
Well, like a lot of English words, it actually comes from Greek. It's from the word epiphanin,
Oh,
which basically means to show or to reveal. And originally, it was used to talk about the appearance of a god.
oh wow. So like an actual divine being, coming down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It had like a much more powerful, almost religious meaning back then.
Wow. So it's interesting how it's evolved, right? From like,
Definitely.
an appearance of God to just like,
Yeah, like I realized
yeah, I forgot my keys. That's
yeah,
my epiphany.
yeah, but even in those everyday moments, like there's still that sense of sudden understanding, like a light bulb going off.
Yeah, that's a good way to think of it.
Yeah, and our source actually gives a really good example of how the word is used. They say, as she stood in the quiet library, an epiphany struck her, and she finally understood the meaning behind the poet's words.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And that image of, that aha moment, like a light bulb turning on.
Exactly.
I think that's a helpful way for people to remember, like, okay, that's what an epiphany actually is.
Exactly. It's not just any thought. It's like a sudden moment of clarity, you know.
Okay, so from sudden moments of clarity, let's move on to something a little more audacious.
Okay.
How about the phrase blowing one's own trumpet? Because this always makes me laugh. Because I can just picture somebody like walking down the street
With a trumpet,
with a giant trumpet.
like announcing themselves.
Like, hey, everybody, look at me.
Exactly. Like, here I am.
But I'm curious, is there like a historical connection to that? Like, did people really walk around
Oh, yeah.
blowing their own trumpets?
Yeah. Well, not exactly walking down the street, but historically, trumpets were used to announce, important people,
Oh, okay.
like on a battlefield
Oh, okay.
or for like, ceremonies and stuff.
So it's like a way to command attention.
Exactly. It's a way of, being like, hey, look at me. I'm important.
And now instead of a battlefield, it's,
The office.
the office. Exactly.
Right.
Or social media or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's less about a literal trumpet and more about just, bragging about yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, so the essence of the idiom's the same.
Yes.
It's just the context has changed a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And our source gives the example, he loves to blow his own trumpet about his promotion at work.
Oh, yeah, we all know that guy.
We all know that guy.
The one who won't stop talking about
Exactly.
how great they are.
Yeah.
But I guess there is a fine line, right, between
Oh, for sure.
healthy confidence
Yeah, you can be proud of your accomplishments.
and then just being.
A jerk.
Yeah, don't be that guy with the trumpet.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about a phrase that's a bit more subtle to dawn on. And I like how our source uses the analogy of a sunrise
Yes.
with light gradually spreading. Yeah, that's a really good way to think about it. It's not like a sudden flash of insight. It's more like a gradual realization.
Okay, but isn't there like a moment where it does kind of click?
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah.
It's like the moment the sun finally crests the horizon. The light's been increasing, but there's that point where you can actually see it.
Okay.
So even though the process leading up to it might be gradual, the realization itself can still feel quite sudden.
Okay, so it's like the pieces are slowly coming together,
Yeah,
and then suddenly he was like, oh, okay, I get it now.
exactly.
Yeah.
And our source actually gives a great example. They say it suddenly dawned on her that she had taken the wrong bus.
Oh, I've definitely been there.
Oh yeah, we all have.
And that feeling of like, wait a minute,
Where am I?
This is not
Yeah.
smart. Exactly. Okay. I find the evolution of words so fascinating, and I know you do too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's amazing how meanings can shift and change over time.
Yeah, and like how, something that maybe started out one way can end up,
Totally different.
yeah, meaning something completely different.
Yeah.
Take, for example, the word cheeky. Like, this is such I think, a uniquely British term.
It is.
And it's hard to kind of like define because it's more than just being bold.
Yeah, it's more nuanced than that.
It's like being a little bit
Mischievous.
mischievous.
Yeah, but in a playful way.
Playful way, yeah.
It's not mean-spirited. It's like you're pushing the boundaries a little bit.
But with a smile.
Exactly. With a twinkle in your eye. And it's interesting because the word itself, like its evolution, is quite fascinating.
Yeah.
It originally just referred to the sides of the face, your
Yeah.
cheeks.
Oh, wow. So how did it go from like a literal body part
I know, it's weird.
to like describing, a personality trait?
Well, it's like over time, cheeky started to be used to describe the expressions you make with your cheeks,
Yeah.
sticking your tongue out, winking, that sort of thing. And eventually it just like evolved into describing that whole playful, mischievous personality.
So like you can picture somebody,
With a cheeky grin.
yeah, with a little cheeky grin on their face, knowing they're being a little bit naughty, but like
Yeah.
in a charming way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our source actually has a perfect example of how it's used. They say he gave the teacher a cheeky grin after answering back with a witty remark. So you can just imagine like that little glint in his eye.
I love that. I think we have time for one more word before we have to move on to part 2.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, this next idiom from our source always makes me think of someone getting the short end of the stick. You know what I mean? Have you ever heard the phrase, to carry the can?
Oh yeah, to carry the can. It means like taking the blame for something.
Yeah, often when you don't even deserve it.
Exactly. Like being the scapegoat.
It does have that feeling of unfairness, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
But where does that phrase even come from? Carry the can. It's kind of weird when you think about it.
Yeah, it is a strange one. The origin is a little bit unclear, but one theory links it to the military,
Oh, okay.
like back in the day.
Yeah.
So imagine a group of soldiers sharing like rations or water from a can.
Okay, yeah.
And if they were caught breaking the rules, the one holding the can would often be the one punished, even if everyone was involved.
Oh, that makes sense. So it's like you're the one who gets caught?
Exactly. Like caught red-handed with a can.
Yeah, and you're left holding the bag.
Or the can. In this
For
case.
the can. Literally, our source gives the example. Despite having no involvement in the decision, she was left to carry the can when things went wrong.
Oof. Yeah, that's rough.
It does feel very unfair, doesn't it?
It does. And I think it's something that happens a lot,
Yeah.
like in workplaces,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
in politics, even in like personal relationships.
It's a good reminder to like look beyond the surface
Absolutely.
and see who's really responsible,
For sure.
Okay, let's completely change gears here. Let's talk about a word that's always seemed a bit mystical to me. Serendipity.
Oh, serendipity. I love that word.
It just sounds magical, doesn't it?
It does. It's
Yeah.
like those happy accidents, those unexpected discoveries.
Yeah, it's like finding a $20 bill in your pocket
Yes.
when you thought you were broke.
Or bumping into an old friend you haven't seen in years.
Yeah, exactly. Those moments where you're like, wow, what are the chances?
Yeah. And the word itself has a really cool backstory. It was coined by a writer named Horace Walpole
Okay.
back in the 18th
It's
century.
18th century, okay.
Yeah, and he was inspired by a Persian fairy tale
Oh, wow.
called The Three Princes of Serendip.
Interesting.
And in the story, these princes, they're always making these fortunate discoveries just by chance.
So they were like walking good luck charms.
Basically. And Walpole, he loved that idea
Yeah.
of these chance encounters leading to good things.
Yeah, like lucky accidents almost.
Yeah, and he captured that in the word serendipity.
I like that a lot. Okay, speaking of chance encounters, maybe we'll stumble upon some serendipity in our next word. This one's a little cheeky, no pun intended. Pulling someone's leg.
Oh, pulling someone's leg, a classic.
Classic. But like, where does that even come from? Like, did people really go around?
And I know, it's such a weird image, right?
Yeah, just like pulling on people's legs.
Yeah, like what's that about? Well, the exact origin is debated.
Okay.
But there is one theory that's pretty interesting. It might actually be connected to street thieves.
Street thieves. Really?
Yeah.
I would have never guessed that.
It's true. So basically the idea is that these thieves would trip their victims by pulling on their legs to make it easier to rob them.
Oh, wow.
That's,
Little bit dark.
yeah, a little bit darker than I was expecting.
Yeah. Not so funny anymore.
Nah, not so much. But I guess it's good that the meaning has changed.
Oh, yeah, for sure. To something a little more lighthearted.
Much more lighthearted. Today, it just means to, like, playfully